Have you ever wondered why we keep worrying, getting angry, feeling afraid, and suffering over and over again? There are people who seem to have everything on the outside: a stable job, a complete family, no shortage of money. Yet inside they carry a vast emptiness, a vague sense of unease and fear, like a dark cloud hanging right above their heads, ready to pour down with just the slightest disturbance. Buddhism teaches that the root of this suffering is our attachment to the self. We believe there is a solid, separate I that must be protected and strengthened at all costs. When someone praises us, the self feels inflated. When we are criticized, the self feels hurt. When we gain something, the self feels satisfied for a moment, then immediately fears losing it. But if we look deeply, we'll see that this self has no fixed form. It is nothing more than a bundle of countless elements: body, mind, thoughts, feelings, memories, all constantly changing from moment to moment. The Buddha taught that there is no true self standing still in the flow of impermanence. So what happens when we let go of this illusion of self? First, we feel lighter, as if an invisible burden has been set down. We no longer have to fear being hurt so much or cling so tightly to an image of ourselves. We began to see things as they really are, arising, existing for a while, then passing away, without getting swept away by the stories our mind creates to defend this I. Try observing yourself. In moments of anger, ask, who is angry? Where did this anger come from? Where is it in the body? How long does it last? When you see it clearly, you'll realize emotions are like passing clouds. They come and go. No one holds on to them except the habits of clinging inside us. Buddhism doesn't ask us to deny the existence of body, mind, or emotions. It simply reminds us not to identify with them. Use mindfulness as a lamp to illuminate the truth that everything is impermanent and not self. Living with this insight, you gradually loosen the grip of your old reactive patterns. Instead of resentment, you can offer understanding. Instead of anxiety, you can breathe and smile. The miracle is that this freedom doesn't come from somewhere far away. It's right here in the moments when you pause, listen to your breath, and watch your mind. Every time you notice the self appearing as greed, jealousy, or fear, gently smile and whisper to yourself, just a passing illusion. Then return to your breath. Return to awareness, of course. Letting go of the self doesn't happen overnight. It's a patient journey of practice, like a stream slowly washing away layers of dust from your mind each day. Just a little mindfulness, a little letting go, a minute of quietly sitting and watching your mind. Every step you take, every meal you eat, can be meditation, an invitation to touch true inner freedom. If you've been walking this path with the Dharma journey, you know this journey isn't about abstract philosophy. It's an invitation to come home to yourself. Every video, every story of Buddhist wisdom on this channel hopes to help you find a little more peace, a little more clarity, so you can light your own lamp on the path ahead. And remember, you are not alone. Whenever you feel restless or worried, pause, close your eyes, and softly chant, Namo Amitabha Buddha. The Buddha's name is like a stream that purifies the mind, guiding you back to steadiness and compassion. If you found this video helpful, please hit subscribe to the Dharma Journey and share it with loved ones so the light of the Dharma can reach even more hearts that are still wandering in the dark. What is known self? In Buddhism, knowing self Anatta does not mean denying the existence of human beings. It does not mean giving up on life or becoming irresponsible or indifferent. Knowing self simply means seeing clearly that there is no unchanging, fixed I sitting inside us, controlling everything the way we often assume. The Buddha taught that what we commonly call I or mine is really just a temporary gathering of the five aggregates: form, rupa, the physical body, the shape we take care of every day, feeling, vedana, sensations, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings we experience through contact with the world, perception, sana, the mental process of recognizing, labeling, and remembering. Mental formations, sankhara, psychological tendencies, habits, and volitions that shape our behavior. Consciousness, vijnana, awareness, the stream of knowing and recognizing. These five aggregates never stand still. They move, interact, and change constantly, shaped by countless conditions both inside and outside us. None of these parts can honestly claim I am the true self. If you look closely, you'll see your body today is not the same body from 5 or 10 years ago. Your feelings, thoughts, memories, and desires shift from moment to moment. But because of ignorance and deep-rooted habits, we bundle these changing elements together and create a story of me. From that, we start weaving endless narratives. I am special. I must be better than others. I must never fail. I can't let people look down on me. I have to protect my image. I have to prove my worth. These stories feel so real, yet they're nothing but a mist that hides the impermanent and selfless nature of all phenomena. When we believe in them blindly, we trap ourselves in cycles of comparison, fear, conflict, and suffering. Look at a simple example in daily life. When someone criticizes you, what gets hurt? Does your physical body really get injured? No. What feels the pain is the self-image, an idea you hold inside. If you see clearly that the criticism is just sound waves passing through your ears and disappearing, would you still suffer as much? Or when someone praises you, what feels delighted? Again, not your physical body growing bigger or stronger. It's the idea of I being reinforced. But then what? That momentary pleasure fades quickly, leaving behind the craving for more praise, the fear of criticism, the constant tension of keeping up an image you hope others will admire. Understanding knowing self doesn't turn you into someone cold or indifferent. On the contrary, when you are no longer chained to the illusion of a rigid self, you become lighter and freer. You can hear praise and criticism without clinging to them. They pass through like a breeze over a calm lake. You stop being trapped in the roles you or others assign to you. A person who truly sees knowing self lives more mindfully in every interaction. They know the other person is also carrying a fragile self-image just like them. Everyone is afraid. Everyone wants to be acknowledged. So instead of reacting, they can set down the need to protect their own ego and open up space to listen and understand. Knowing self also doesn't mean abandoning everyday responsibilities. You still care for your body, work, nurture your family, and build relationships. The difference is that you do all these without the heavy burden of attachment to I and mine. You know everything is borrowed, dependent on conditions, bound to change and dissolve. You care, protect, and cultivate, but you do not cling. With this perspective, you can live more fully in the present. Every moment becomes a small miracle. The self doesn't stand in the way, separating you from life. When you eat, you know you're eating. When you walk, you know you're walking. When you breathe, you know you're breathing. Body and mind in harmony with all things. No rigid boundary between me and the world out there. Of course, realizing knowing self is not easy. Reading a few lines or listening to a single talk isn't enough. Seeing knowing self is a process of patient practice, returning again and again to observe body and mind, shining a light on every thought, reaction, and habit. Each time you catch yourself and remember, this is just a feeling. It's not me. This is just a thought. It's not me. Slowly, the illusion of self grows thin, then disappears like morning mist under sunlight. The clearer you see knowing self, the closer you are to true freedom. This freedom isn't given by anyone, and no one can take it away. It doesn't depend on external conditions. It lies in your own capacity to let go of attachment, to see everything just as it is, without projecting, labeling, or clinging. In mindful breathing, in each grounded step, in the eyes that see and the heart that understands, you begin to live with the spaciousness and kindness that is your true nature. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to gently release the self you've been told to protect for so long. And when that self steps aside, peace appears, quiet and vast like the sky. Why does the self create suffering? When we believe the self, the I, is real, we immediately give birth to fear and anxiety. This happens so quickly and so automatically that most of us don't even notice it. The moment you think I am someone, you must also protect that someone, defend them, polish their image, guard their reputation, prove their worth. You start fearing loss of status, loss of approval, loss of success, loss of love. You dread failure, rejection, embarrassment. The mind becomes like a tight knot, constantly worrying about how to gain praise and avoid blame, how to win and not lose, how to be more and not less. Take a simple example. When someone praises you, the self swells with pride. When someone criticizes you, the self shrinks in pain. We become trapped in this cycle. Praise lifts us up, blame drags us down. Success feeds our ego, failure wounds it deeply. The more we identify with this self, the more sensitive and reactive we become. A single word of praise or insult can control our entire mood for hours, days, or even years. The Buddha saw this mechanism clearly. He called it apadana, attachment or clinging. Clinging to the idea of self is the root of suffering and endless rebirth. It binds us to the cycle of samsara, the wheel of birth, aging, sickness, death, and rebirth, fueled by craving and ignorance. When you hold tightly to an idea of who you are, every experience becomes filtered through the lens of protecting that identity. If your sense of self depends on being seen as smart, you'll suffer terribly when someone points out a mistake. If you build your worth on being successful, failure will feel like death. If you cling to being loved, the thought of rejection becomes a nightmare. This clinging doesn't just hurt you, it shapes how you treat others too. If you believe you must be better than everyone else, you see people as rivals, threats, or stepping stones. Comparison, envy, competition, resentment all grow from this attachment. Even when you love someone, the self turns love into possession. This is my partner. my child, my friend. You fear losing them because their presence feeds the self-image you cling to. The tragedy is that the self is never truly satisfied, no matter how much you feed it. With praise, success, status, it always wants more. And underneath all its demands lies a deep insecurity. It knows it is not solid, not real, not permanent. That's why it needs constant reinforcement. Have you noticed how quickly your mind can shift from pride to fear? One moment, a compliment makes you feel you're good enough. The next moment, a criticism makes you doubt yourself completely. The self has no ground of its own. It floats, fragile, built on stories that change with every new word, every look from another person. Buddhism invites us to look directly at this, not to hate the self, but to see it for what it is, a mental construct, a bundle of clinging and ideas. When you see clearly that your suffering comes from grasping this phantom, you begin to loosen your grip. It's not about suppressing thoughts or pretending you have no personality. It's about seeing through the illusion that this personality is an unchanging I. You still have a body, feelings, memories, preferences, but they arise and pass away according to conditions. They are not you. When this insight deepens, freedom begins to appear. You still hear praise and blame, but they no longer push and pull you so violently. You don't have to build walls to protect a fragile self-image. You don't have to prove anything. You can simply be here, alive, aware, connected to this moment without needing to be someone special. Imagine a mind like the open sky. Thoughts and feelings are like passing clouds, sometimes light and pretty, sometimes dark and heavy. But the sky does not cling to them. The sky does not shrink when a storm passes through. This is the taste of true freedom, the freedom that comes when you stop believing you are the clouds and remember you are the vastness behind them. The Buddha taught that suffering ends not by building a stronger self, but by seeing there is no fixed self to defend in the first place. The more you practice observing your mind, the more you catch yourself clinging. You notice how a word or thought triggers the need to protect or justify me. And in that noticing, you have a choice. Do you tighten the knot or gently let go? Each moment of letting go is like opening a window in a stuffy room. Fresh air comes in. Space returns, the weight lifts off your chest. This is not something you have to wait for in the next life. It is a freedom available now, breath by breath, moment by moment, whenever you remember to look clearly. And the beauty is, as the self loses its grip, compassion naturally arises. When you stop obsessing over my pain, my loss, my status, your heart has room to feel others' pain too. You see that everyone else clings to the same fragile illusion, suffers in the same hidden ways. You respond with understanding instead of judgment, kindness instead of competition. In the end, the self that creates suffering is nothing but a dream held together by clinging. See through the clinging, and the dream loses its power. The suffering loosens its hold. What remains is a mind free to meet life with openness and a heart light enough to love without fear, understanding impermanence to let go. One of the most profound ways to see knowing self is to deeply contemplate impermanence. Impermanence, Anatta in Pali, is not an abstract idea to memorize. It's a truth we can see directly here and now in our body, our mind, and everything we experience. Look closely at your own mind. Every emotion you feel rises, stays for a while, and fades away. Every thought that appears in your head, whether helpful or destructive, also comes and goes. Every success you celebrate, every failure you dread, every relationship you cling to, all of them change, shift, transform, or dissolve over time. When you truly see this, something inside you relaxes. You begin to loosen your grip on the stories your mind keeps spinning to protect the self. You no longer feel the desperate need to hold tight to a fixed image of who you are. At first, this can feel scary. We spend our whole lives trying to build up an identity, a role, a reputation, a story that gives us a sense of control and permanence. We collect achievements, memories, and labels to tell ourselves, "This is me." But when you start to notice how unstable these things really are, you realize how fragile that story is. Your body is changing every moment. Cells dying, cells being born, aging happening quietly beneath your skin. Your feelings shift from morning to evening, from one conversation to the next. The things you once thought you couldn't live without may already be gone. And yet, here you are, still breathing. When we ignore impermanence, we cling desperately to what we think will make us happy or safe. We cling to possessions, to people, to moments of pleasure. But because everything is changing, this clinging brings pain. The more tightly we hold on, the more suffering we create when the inevitable change arrives. Seeing impermanence does not mean we have to reject life or push people away. It means we learn to hold life with an open hand, appreciating what comes, caring for what we love, but knowing it can't be frozen in place. Imagine holding water in your palm. If you squeeze your hand tightly, the water escapes through your fingers. If you open your hand gently, the water stays for a moment, resting in your palm. Life is like that. It stays when we don't try to trap it. When you see impermanence clearly, you understand that the you try so hard to defend is woven from ever-changing pieces. There is no solid core, just thoughts, emotions, memories, habits, conditions. Knowing this helps you stop taking your stories so seriously. When anger comes, you see it's just a wave passing through your mind. When sadness visits, you recognize it as a visitor, not a permanent part of who you are. When joy bubbles up, you savor it fully, knowing it too will pass. This doesn't make you numb or detached. It makes you tender and awake. You start to cherish each moment because you know it is precious and fleeting. You listen more deeply, speak more gently, love more freely, because you know none of this will last forever. Impermanence also helps when you face loss. When someone leaves you or something falls apart, the pain is still there, but you suffer less when you understand this is the nature of life, not a personal punishment, but a reality shared by all beings. Think of the trees in a forest. They lose their leaves in winter. They bloom again in spring. If a branch breaks, new shoots appear elsewhere. Life is constant movement and renewal. Nothing is wasted. Everything transforms. When we resist this flow, we suffer. When we flow with it, we find freedom. This is why the Buddha didn't ask us to worship him or accept doctrines blindly. He encouraged us to see for ourselves. All conditioned things are impermanent. If you want to taste this truth, you don't have to go anywhere special. Just sit quietly and watch your breath. Notice how each inhale appears, stays, and disappears. Notice how sensations arise in the body, then fade. Notice how thoughts drift in and out like clouds across the sky. With practice, you begin to live with a lighter heart. You don't have to pretend to be someone fixed and flawless. You don't have to cling so tightly to success or run from failure. You don't have to hold grudges forever, because even resentment is impermanent if you let it pass through. Little by little, seeing impermanence teaches you to trust the unfolding of life. It softens your fear of change. It frees you from the exhausting struggle of trying to make the world stand still. You see clearly. There is no solid I at the center of this dance. Just the dance itself. When you understand impermanence deeply, you naturally begin to touch known self. You see the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, all flowing moment by moment. Nothing stays the same long enough to be called a me or mine. This is not a dry concept. It's a living freedom. The more you see impermanence, the more you let go. The more you let go, the more peace you find. The more peace you find, the more love you have to offer, because there's no rigid self left to defend. So take a breath, look around, notice how the light changes, how sounds come and go, how your thoughts appear and vanish. This is impermanence in action. Gentle, relentless, liberating. The more you see it, the less you cling, and the less you cling, the lighter you become. Free to be fully here, fully alive without needing to grasp at what cannot stay. Practicing mindfulness to free the self. Mindfulness is one of the greatest powers. You have to loosen the grip of the self. It is not just a technique for stress relief or relaxation. It is a way to see clearly how the I is created moment by moment through unconscious habits and stories. When you practice mindfulness, you bring your full attention to the present moment. You breathe, walk, work, listen, and feel with awareness. In that space of clear seeing, you start to notice something simple yet profound. Most of your worries, fears, and attachments live not in the reality of now, but in the thoughts you spend about the past and future. The mind loves to wander. It replays old hurts, regrets, and mistakes over and over again, feeding the self-image of I am a victim, I am a failure, or I am someone who must prove myself. Then it leaps ahead, building hopes, fears, and expectations about what might happen next. All of this fuels the illusion of a solid self that must be protected or perfected. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. It invites you to come home, not to the stories in your head, but to the direct experience of this breath, this step, this sound, this feeling in your body. You learn to see thoughts as thoughts, not as absolute truth. When you sit mindfully with your breath, you notice the inhale comes, stays for a moment, and leaves. The exhale comes, stays for a moment, and leaves. Thoughts drift in. You see them, they drift out. Suddenly you realize you don't have to chase every thought or believe every story. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them come and go. This insight is the first crack in the wall of the self. Mindfulness is not about escaping reality or forcing your mind to be blank. It's about facing reality fully. Seeing what is here without judgment, without adding extra layers of blame, guilt, or fantasy. You feel your anger, but you also see how it rises, peaks, and dissolves. You notice your craving, but you also see its restless energy come and go. Bit by bit, the self-script weakens. You begin to taste a freedom that does not depend on changing your circumstances, but on changing the way you relate to your own mind, When you wash the dishes with mindfulness, you don't just rush to finish so you can get to the next thing. You feel the warm water on your hands, the smooth surface of the plate, the sound of water splashing. Your mind is not lost in the past or future. It is here. When you walk mindfully, each step connects you to the ground. You feel the earth holding you up. You notice how your body moves, how your breath flows with your stride. You're not walking to arrive. You are simply walking, fully alive in each moment. This simple practice slowly changes everything. It reveals how often your suffering is not caused by reality itself, but by your resistance to it. Your stories about how it should be, your clinging to how it was, your fear of how it might be. The more you rest in mindfulness, the more you see how the self is just a bundle of these mental habits. It is not a fixed thing you must carry like a heavy backpack forever. It is a pattern that can soften, loosen, and dissolve. In moments of deep mindfulness, you may notice how natural it feels to just be here. No need to perform. No need to defend. No need to be someone special. You can respond to life with openness rather than reactivity. A harsh word comes your way. You feel the sting. You breathe. You see the hurt without clinging to it. There is space between you and the old reaction. That space is freedom. Mindfulness also reveals the interdependence behind the illusion of self. When you are truly present, you see that your breath comes from the air, which comes from the trees, which come from the earth and rain and sun. You realize your body is nourished by food grown by countless hands you'll never meet. You see that your thoughts are shaped by family, culture, and experiences. Where is the separate I in all this? It is impossible to find. This is not an idea to force on yourself. It's a reality you see when you pay careful, gentle attention. The more you see it, the more compassion naturally arises. You realize that just like you, everyone else is acting out their own stories of self. Everyone suffers when they believe those stories too deeply. So mindfulness does not just free you, it softens you. It helps you listen more deeply, speak more truthfully, love more fully. It reminds you that every moment is new, every breath is fresh, and you are never stuck in an old version of who you think you are. The next time you find yourself tangled in worrying or self-judgment, pause, take one mindful breath, feel your feet on the ground, notice the sound around you. Ask yourself gently, where is the I that needs to be defended right now? Look for it, and watch how it shifts, dissolves, then reappears as just another thought. This is the simple miracle of mindfulness. You don't have to destroy the self. You only need to see how it is made. And when you see that clearly, you can set it down again and again, breath by breath, moment by moment, until what's left is just awareness, spacious, kind, and free, nurturing compassion. It dissolved the boundary between self and others. One of the most powerful ways to loosen the grip of the self is to cultivate genuine compassion for others, for yourself, and for all beings who share this life with you. Compassion is not just a pleasant feeling or a moral duty. It is a living force that gently dissolves the rigid walls we build around me and mine. When you truly wish for others to be happy, you begin to see how thin the line is between your well-being and theirs. Most of the suffering that comes from this sense of self is rooted in comparison and separation. The mind keeps asking, how am I doing compared to them? Am I better? Am I worse? Do they have what I want? Are they standing in my way? This constant measuring fuels jealousy, resentment, and fear of loss. It makes you feel small and isolated, cut off from the rest of life. But when compassion is alive in your heart, this tight knot starts to loosen. When you sincerely wish for another person to be free from suffering, you can't at the same time cling tightly to the story that you are separate and alone. You begin to sense that their pain is not so different from yours. Their joy is not so different either. Think of a moment when you felt genuine care for someone. Maybe a friend going through a hard time, or a stranger who looked lost and tired. In that moment, were you busy defending your ego, or did your heart naturally soften, open, and reach out beyond I and you? True compassion is not pity. It is not about feeling superior or trying to fix others to satisfy your pride. It is the deep wish. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be at peace. It is the recognition that, just like you, everyone is doing their best to find happiness and avoid pain. Sometimes skillfully, sometimes blindly, sometimes in ways that create more suffering. When you train your heart in compassion, you slowly replace the habit of judgment with understanding. Instead of "they shouldn't act like that," you ask, what pain might be behind their anger? What fear is hiding beneath their harsh words? Instead of "why do they have what I don't?" you feel gratitude for the goodness in their life, knowing happiness is not a limited resource that must be hoarded. This shift is not just about being nice, it is about seeing reality clearly. The Buddha taught that all beings are connected, interwoven like threads in a vast, living tapestry. When you water the seeds of compassion, you see more and more that your happiness and the happiness of others are not separate. Even science shows this truth. When you act with kindness, your body releases chemicals that lower stress and strengthen your immune system. Your mind becomes calmer. You feel more trust, more warmth, more ease in the company of others. Compassion is not just good for others. It is medicine for your own heart. The amazing thing is, compassion grows with practice. You don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to feel it. You can start with small moments when you see someone struggling, even if it's a stranger on the street. Silently wish them well. May you be free from suffering. When you catch yourself envying someone's success, pause and wish for their happiness to continue. Little by little, these wishes train your mind to stop clinging to the boundary of self and other. You see more clearly that this boundary is not solid. It is just an idea held together by fear and habit. As your compassion deepens, your sense of identity expands. You are no longer just protecting me and mine. You start to feel responsible for the well-being of the whole. The people you know, the people you don't, even animals and nature. This does not mean carrying the whole world's suffering on your shoulders. It means you live with an open heart, ready to respond with care where you can. Paradoxically, this openness does not drain you. It energizes you. When you drop the constant, self-centered struggle, you find more space inside for joy, connection, and peace. You don't have to pretend to be flawless or prove your worth. You simply live as part of the vast web of life, giving and receiving goodwill. Compassion also softens the sharp edges of self-criticism. When you truly see that everyone suffers and makes mistakes because of ignorance and fear, you stop punishing yourself so harshly. You begin to include yourself in the circle of kindness. You remember, this human life is hard for all of us. In this way, compassion becomes a bridge from isolation to belonging, from fear to trust, from self-centeredness to freedom. It does not require grand gestures. It grows through small, sincere acts. A gentle word, a patient ear, a quiet wish for someone's happiness, a forgiving thought for yourself. Over time, compassion reveals the truth the Buddha pointed to over and over. There is no separate, unchanging I cut off from everything else. There is only this life, flowing, interconnected, breathing through all beings. When you feel this truth in your bones, even for a moment, the old walls of self begin to crumble. The more they crumble, the more love flows through. Not a clinging, possessive love, but a love that wishes only for all beings to be free. And in that wish, your own freedom naturally blooms. True freedom does not come from the outside. Many of us grow up believing that freedom is something outside ourselves. We tell ourselves that if we have enough money, enough power, enough recognition, then all our worries will vanish and we will finally live unburdened and free. But in reality, the more we cling to external conditions, the more easily we lose our inner freedom. The more a person has, the more they fear losing it. The higher someone stands, the more they fear being brought down. One harsh word, a rumor, a misunderstanding. Any of these can be enough to shake our peace and steal our sleep. The Buddha pointed this out more than 2,000 years ago. He taught that true freedom is not the result of hoarding or owning. It can only appear when the mind learns to let go of its attachment to the illusion of a fixed self. When we believe there is a solid, unchanging I, we immediately feel the need to protect it. We build an image. I am good, I am important. I must not fall behind anyone. Then we pour our energy into decorating, defending, and holding up that image with wealth, status, relationships, anything outside us that we think can prove our worth. But life is impermanent. That image is fragile, always vulnerable to sudden changes. A financial crisis, an unexpected illness, a false rumor. All of these can crack the shell we work so hard to build. When it begins to break, we panic, grow angry, lose hope, and scramble to patch it back together, desperately clinging to what little illusion remains. Many people spend their entire lives chasing external freedom, only to find themselves wrapped tighter in inner chains. These chains are fear. Fear of losing what the self depends on. Fear of losing status, praise, affection, money, admiration. In contrast, Buddhism offers another path. Real freedom is not having every desire fulfilled, but seeing clearly where desire comes from. Recognizing that it arises from the illusion of a self that must be constantly pampered and defended. Look deeply. Is there anything truly permanent and unchanging enough to hold on to forever? This body will age, grow sick, and dissolve. Feelings shift like the wind. Fame today can become a burden tomorrow. Everything comes and goes, like clouds drifting through an open sky. Only when we truly see the impermanent and selfless nature of all things can we begin to touch genuine inner freedom. When there is no rigid I to build up and defend, there is nothing to lose and no one to fear for. Then we can still work, create, and enjoy the beauty of life. But with ease and lightness, we can still love and care, but without suffocating those we love with demands rooted in the self. A truly free person is not someone who runs away from life. A truly free person is someone who sees clearly the interdependent nature of all things, understanding that every phenomenon arises from countless conditions, and that there is no separate I controlling it all from behind the scenes. Because of this understanding, they can live fully in the changing world without being swept away by it. They know when to hold on and when to let go without being bound by fear or craving. When praised, they receive it like a cool breeze, pleasant but passing. When criticized, they listen without letting the self flare up and wound them further. Freedom is no longer a distant dream waiting at the end of success or wealth. It lives in the way we touch each breath, each thought, each small reaction of our mind. It appears when we are mindful enough to see, I am not what I have believed myself to be. Someone who sees this clearly no longer needs to compete endlessly. They no longer feel the urge to prove themselves right or suffer when others misunderstand them. They can accept gain and loss, praise and blame, victory and defeat as natural parts of life. In this letting go, they find endless energy to love, to share, to live fully without fear. As the self thins, compassion naturally grows. The line between me and others begins to blur. Then you realize that true freedom has never been outside of you. It has always been here, waiting for you to release the heavy illusions and return to your own vast, silent, and kind nature. Each day, just one mindful breath, one moment of looking deeply, one gentle willingness to loosen your old attachments. That is how you plant the seeds of freedom right in the middle of your everyday life, little by little, step by step. You see that there is nothing that must be clung to tightly, and no one left to fiercely defend. And in that moment, freedom is no longer a distant promise. It is right here in the breath you take, the step you place on the earth, the quiet smile of someone who is no longer trapped inside the invisible prison built by their own mind. You don't need to become anyone. One of the most beautiful and liberating teachings of the Buddha is this simple truth. You don't need to become anyone. You don't need to twist yourself into someone better, someone more perfect, someone more lovable or impressive. You don't need to chase some ideal version of yourself in the hope that when you finally reach it, you'll be worthy of peace. Why? Because at your deepest level, you are not limited by the narrow idea of a self at all. You spend so much time polishing and defending is not something solid and unchanging. It is a collection of stories, memories, habits, and fleeting feelings. When you see this clearly, a quiet freedom begins to unfold. So much of our anxiety comes from trying to be someone. We measure ourselves by what we achieve, how others see us, whether we fit into the roles we believe will protect us. The good child, the successful professional, the ideal partner, the wise friend. We cling to praise and shrink from criticism because both feel like they define us. But what happens when you start to loosen your faith in this fixed self? Something shifts inside you. Praise and blame lose their power to shake you so deeply. You hear kind words without swelling with pride that must be guarded. You hear harsh words without shrinking into shame. Fear of loss softens. You understand that what can be lost was never truly you to begin with. Not your job, your status, your image, or even your ideas about yourself. You find the freedom to live more naturally, more honestly. You don't need to wear masks or armor. You don't have to force yourself to be perfect or prove anything to anyone. True inner freedom is not about changing the outside world until it finally feels safe enough for you to relax. It is about discovering that nothing outside you can ever limit the spaciousness within you, except your own clinging to an idea of who you are. Of course, letting go of the self doesn't mean you lose your personality or your uniqueness. It means you see that these things are fluid and alive, not a prison you have to squeeze yourself into. When you stop clinging to me, life becomes lighter. You act from kindness, not ego. You love more fully because you're not trying to possess or protect an image. You work, create, speak, and listen without the exhausting burden of constantly asking, "How does this make me look?" Imagine the relief to do what needs to be done, to say what is true, to give what you have to give, without the hidden fear that you're not enough or that you must become more to be complete. This freedom doesn't come from forcing yourself to believe you have no self. It grows naturally as you observe your mind. Sit with your thoughts and feelings long enough, and you see them rise and pass away. One moment you feel happy and generous, the next worried or resentful. One moment you think you're wise, the next you see your mistakes. If the self were truly solid and fixed, how could it shift so easily? Seeing this directly, you stop trying to hold it together. You stop fearing its cracks and changes. And when you stop fearing them, you discover the deep peace that has been here all along, hidden beneath the nose of self-image. This doesn't mean you give up growth or responsibility. It means you grow for the sake of truth and compassion, not to decorate an illusion. You take care of your life, your actions, your words, not because you're desperate to polish your self-worth, but because you care about the well-being of all life, including your own. In this space, self-improvement becomes self-liberation. You don't force yourself to become someone. You let go of what you're not. You shed old stories, old masks, old defenses. What remains is something open and simple. Just this breath, this moment, this aware heart. When you really feel this, even for a few seconds, it changes how you walk through the world. You see others not as threats or competition, but as people carrying the same burden you've carried, the burden of believing they must become someone special to deserve peace. Your compassion deepens, your judgments soften. If you want to taste this freedom, you don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You can begin now. Notice when you feel the urge to impress, to prove, to defend. Pause, breathe, ask gently, who am I trying to become right now? What happens if I don't hold so tightly to this role? Bit by bit, you train your mind to rest in the freedom that has always been yours. The freedom to simply be, not as someone who must constantly justify their worth, but as awareness itself. Vast, quiet, kind. No praise can inflate this freedom. No insult can puncture it. No gain or loss can stain it. It is your true refuge, always waiting beneath the layers of who you think you should be. You don't need to become anyone. You only need to remember who you are when you stop believing the illusion of a fixed self and live each moment from that open, fearless place. That is true inner freedom, and it is yours, here and now, if you dare to trust it. I hope today's video has helped you see more clearly. Knowing self isn't some distant, abstract idea. It is a living key that can unlock your suffering and reveal a deeper kind of happiness, a freedom that doesn't depend on anything outside you. If this message touches something in you, remember, you are not alone on this path. We walk it together, step by step, breath by breath. And if you found this content helpful, I invite you to subscribe to the Dharma Journey. Here, we keep exploring mindfulness, meditation, Buddhism, and the art of coming home to peace. Let this space be a quiet refuge where you can return to yourself again and again, to listen, to reflect, to remember what really matters beneath all the noise of daily life. What is the biggest challenge you face in trying to let go of the self? What makes it hardest for you to release the need to defend, to cling, to protect this idea of me? I would truly love to hear your thoughts. Your insights and struggles help all of us grow. Please share in the comments below. When you speak your truth, you plant seeds of understanding for others too. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, remember this simple practice. Pause, place your hands gently together, and silently recite the Buddha's name, like offering a lotus flower to your own heart. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Each recitation is like a fresh lotus blooming on the calm surface of your mind, reminding you, peace is always here when you return to awareness, no matter where you are right now. Whether surrounded by noise or sitting in a quiet corner, know that freedom is always just one mindful breath away. The more you understand the nature of the self, the lighter you become. And the lighter you become, the more love, patience, and compassion flow naturally from you, like a lotus opening in clear water. So take this teaching with you into your everyday moments, into the small annoyances, the conversations, the choices. Keep asking gently, what am I really defending right now? What am I really afraid to lose? Who would I be if I just let go? You don't need to solve everything all at once. Just see clearly, breathe deeply, and let your practice bloom quietly in the middle of ordinary life. Bit by bit, the walls of the self soften, and what remains is spacious, kind, and unshakable. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to sit with these truths, to question deeply, to open your heart to something beyond the small self. May you always remember that freedom is your true nature, calm, luminous, unbound. If today's video brought you any peace, please consider subscribing to the Dharma Journey and sharing this teaching with someone who might need it. Together, we can remind each other of the simple, timeless truths that help us walk this life with clarity and courage. And please don't forget to leave your reflections or questions below. Your voice is precious, like a lotus blooming on this shared pond of practice. May you be safe, may you be peaceful. May you live each moment like a lotus, rooted in mud yet blooming in pure, clear water. Namo Amitabha Buddha.